In this video, I'm going to be taking a look at some of the terrariums and paludariums I've made over the past few months and seeing how they've grown. Be sure to stick around to the end to get a sneak peek of an upcoming project. Let's start with this mini jungle terrarium. I made this terrarium over 4 months ago and it's definitely changed a lot since then. My aim for this build was to create a miniature jungle with a variety of different moss and plants, and I definitely think I achieved that. As you can see, all the moss and plants have grown in really well. As some of you may remember, I did actually add a small centipede into this terrarium. Due to the heavy moss and plant growth, I haven't actually seen it since then. This was expected as they're nocturnal and do spend most of their time hiding. One of my favourite things about this terrarium is the diverse carpet made up of different plants and moss. I really like how natural it looks, but it's definitely in need of a trim sometime soon. Other than that, there's really not much maintenance that needs to be done other than pulling out a few dead leaves. I'm only going to pull out a few of the dead leaves and the rest I'll leave in there for the springtails to feed on. Now let's move on and take a look at some other terrariums. Here's some of the jar terrariums I made over the past few months, including this spice jar paludarium. They've all been growing really well and are all showing signs that they're super healthy. This tree trunk terrarium I made 7 months ago has got to be one of my favourites. The good thing about these terrariums is that they require pretty much zero maintenance. This is the terrarium I made for the in-depth beginner terrarium tutorial video and it's been doing really well. The spiderwood is going through another small mould phase, but the springtails will take care of it and I don't need to intervene at all. Now let's take a look at the fallen log terrarium, which is just past 3 months old. Other than the small gap of moss in the foreground which I pulled out for another project, most of the plants inside are doing great. But there are a few which definitely could be doing better. The baby tears in the foreground is one of them. For the most part it's healthy, but there are a few patches which seem to be dying off. In this case, the best practice would be to remove the parts that aren't looking too healthy. This will allow the plant to use its energy to grow new and healthy stems, instead of it wasting its energy maintaining the unhealthy ones. One plant that's doing great and is definitely one of my favourites is the tricolour ferns. I really like the bronzy red tint these leaves have to them. When spinning the terrarium round, you can get a glimpse of some of the healthy roots that are growing throughout. This is a great sign that the plants in the background are all healthy. The moss was looking a little dry, so I'm going to give it a light spray before moving on to the next update. This is my flowing waterfall paludarium that has just passed 6 weeks old. It's a more recent build on the channel and it's definitely one of my favourites. The plants in here have been growing really well with only a couple exceptions. One of these exceptions is this small patch of boost. For some reason it's been slowly losing leaves over the past few weeks. I'm not sure why, but hopefully it's just acclimating and will bounce back soon. As for the 3 tiny inhabitants living in here, they've been doing great and working hard. The tiny snails have been keeping on top of algae and as a result the water area is looking for the most part really clean. My favourite plant in here has got to be the bulbitis. It's a miniature aquatic fern and I really like the detail it brings to the scape. Other than the bucephalandra by the water, the other buces are doing well. These ones here have got new leaves coming through, which is a great sign that they're healthy. I can't do an update video without taking a closer look at the vivariums in the background. Both of these tanks are well over 2 years old and they're thriving. Excuse the dirty glass, the camera definitely makes it look 10 times worse. This one here is home to some beautiful dart frogs. I have done a heavy maintenance session and pulled out a bunch of plants since the last time I made a video on these tanks. But as you can see, they've bounced back really well and may even be in need of a trim sometime soon. A couple weeks ago I added in this Philodendron verrucosum mini and it seems to be settling in well. I've had it in a small grow out container for about a year and I finally got round to adding it inside this tank. Now let's take a look at the tank on the right, which is home to my hourglass tree frog named Grogu. I was considering redoing this tank and I may do in the future, but as of now I'm really liking how it's looking. Similar to the other tank, I gave this tank a massive trim down. The plants were completely overgrown and even started to choke themselves out, which is definitely not ideal. Now I think it's about time to take a look at the flowing waterfall and the flowing stream terrariums. I'm going to leave these on the shelf as they're quite awkward to unplug and move. Let's start with the flowing waterfall jungle terrarium. I've had no issues whatsoever with this setup, which is perfect. I haven't done any maintenance apart from changing the water every couple weeks. When changing the water, I do add a couple drops of this Seasham Flourish. It's sold as a liquid fertiliser for aquariums, but it works great in a setup like this if you dilute it in water first. As there's only minimal substrate in here, this will provide the moss and plants the nutrients they need to grow. Let's take a closer look at some of the plants. This Anubias is the centrepiece, and it's sent out a new leaf right here, which is a great sign that it's healthy. For the most part, the Java moss has been growing nicely. In some areas it has been growing a little bit leggy, but this can easily be taken care of with some scissors. The plants at the base have also been doing great and really helped bring out that jungle look I was going for. Now let's take a closer look at the flowing stream terrarium, which is just past 3 months old. Similar to the other terrarium, I've been doing a water change every couple weeks. The star of this terrarium has definitely got to be the Java moss. I usually don't like it when it grows tall and leggy, but for some reason in this tank I really like how it looks. The Monte Carlo in the foreground has grown really well, and the plants in the back are all doing a good job at filling out the space. Now let's move on and take a look at the Nano Cube terrariums. Let's start with this one on the left, which is home to some beautiful isopods. Overall, I'd say the tank is doing well, although the isopods have been munching on the moss a little bit. There's a healthy population in here and there's lots of babies, which is great to see. Now let's take a look at the Nano Cube next door. The Java moss at the front is growing really well, but it is getting a little taller than I would like, so it's going to need a trim sometime soon. My favourite thing about this tank has definitely got to be the selection of ferns inside. I really think they contrast each other well and add to the natural look of the scape. Now before I show you a sneak peek of an upcoming project, drop a comment and tell me which one out of all these terrariums is your favourite. As I'm sure you're aware, I didn't cover every project in this video, and I actually have another rack just like this with even more terrariums on it. I'll be sure to show you them in a future upload. But for the time being, enjoy an early look into this mini ecosystem.